Tony Siracusa, last word on college football. Tony, how many conversations have we had through the years about Chip Kelly and his failings at UCLA and possibly the game passing him by? And here he sits, and I don't want to oversell it because the first three non-conference games should have been gimmies, although South Alabama certainly put a scare into the Bruins. And Dorian Thompson-Robinson, maybe the knock, not necessarily on him, but the development of him has been that it hasn't been as expeditious as it should have been through the beginning of his career, but he's playing out of his mind as well. How impressed are you with the UCLA side of this?
Well, I think you have to be very impressed, but let's also be clear where the credit goes. Because I was pinged by Martin Jarman on Friday. We were having a conversation, and I won't go into too much detail because it was a private conversation, but that his opinion was it might not be a coincidence that after 5 years of covering UCLA, I moved to the other side of the country to Charlotte, North Carolina. And now look at the season the Bruins are having. Martin implied that it may not be a coincidence.
Tony, we're going to create a new statistic for Chip Kelly's coaching line. It's not going to be like divided into Oregon, the NFL, and UCLA. It's going to be with Tony and without Tony.
Right. Yeah. Look, I think one of the things you look at with UCLA, obviously, is the maturity. It is a very veteran team. Not just through players that they've brought up themselves, but players that they got through the transfer portal. There's a large number of grad students that they've got on this roster making an impact on the team. But I think one of the things you look at first and foremost is the offense, is Dorian Thompson-Robinson. There's a maturity to him, a mental and emotional maturity that is showing up on the field. He was always very athletic. He always had the skill set. But he didn't always understand the moment. He didn't always grasp the what needed to be done in any given time and space on the field. And you see him grasping that fully now. There's a maturity to his game where he's not trying to do things he shouldn't do. He's not forcing balls into places that he really has no business trying to get a pass in. That he is utilizing all parts of his offense to the best of his ability, even when he's checking off plays. So I think really that's the start of it. And look, we've gone from a quarterback who, for the better part of 3 years, the fan base always wanted to know who was next, who was behind him. And now you have a guy who I don't think there's any question is so far this season, after 6 weeks, has put himself at least in the conversation to get some Heisman thought.
Tony, good to talk to you again.
You too, Matt.
The surprise of the season is not just that Chip Kelly's regained his fastball from Zachary Neal's Oregon Ducks a decade ago, and that there really is a large similarity to Chip Kelly era Oregon in this UCLA team. But also, UCLA didn't play well against South Alabama. Like that game was right on the razor's edge. So it's not as though DTR just had this immediate ascendancy at the start of the season. Something happened midway that got everything to click. What was the moment when it all seemed to come together and that new level of awareness that you accurately pointed to really seemed to emerge? Yeah,
you're right. UCLA was a bad play call by the South Alabama coaching staff away from actually losing that game, which, would have just fed into the narrative of Chip Kelly and his failed tenure at UCLA. I think really what there was, there's a bit of a slowing down of the game. DTR didn't even play all of the game against Bowling Green or against Alabama, because why would he? They were blowouts and you didn't need it. He gets, plays the whole way through against South Alabama, and it was a kind of mediocre game. But then you get all the conference games, after that. And there was something that really elevated his game against Colorado. He obviously stepped up in tremendous fashion against Washington, which at this point, I think many of us can agree was a hugely overrated Washington team going into the season versus where they are now. And then had a great game against Utah, which was, I think, look, DTR is, and I don't say this as a negative, he's a cocky young kid. He really is. There's a difference between self-confidence and cocky. He's never lacked self-confidence. There's a part of him that is enjoying having a bit of a chip on his shoulder of all these doubters, all of these years. You know, I know, Matt, you and I have talked about it, and Mark and I have certainly talked about it. His mother, Melva, is big on the social media front and throwing out her commentary to people like me with what her son is capable of and what he can do. And he's kind of ingrained a lot of that into his on-field persona right now. So when he's playing Michael Penix against Washington, or he's playing Cam Rising against Utah, he's taking it as a personal competition to elevate his team. And you know, I really think that that's a big part of it right now. And so clearly Saturday against Bo Nix, whom I have never been that high on at Auburn because of his inconsistency, but Nix is having a terrific season up in Eugene. And so I think this is like the next elevation for DTR to see if he can step up to that level.